Well, folks, it appears Murphy has followed us back to the city. So we got this nice little puddle of what appears to be some type of hydraulic fluid under our truck. So this truck that I can think of has three sources of fluid: automatic transmission fluid, brake fluid, or power steering fluid. Based on the location that it's dripping from the front center of the truck, I'm going to go with power steering fluid. So we're going to have to dig into this and find out where it's coming from. If we go under the truck, we've got skid plates because this is a four-wheel drive, so we're going to have to remove those skid plates to get up there and see exactly where this is coming from. I can see a little drip right here on this panel. That's another skid plate under the front differential. So it appears to be dripping down onto there and then dripping off onto the ground. So we're gonna have to go up above and find the source. So basically, if that's power steering fluid, then we've got three possibilities. So if you look inside there, you can just see the serpentine belt over a pulley right there. That is the power steering pump, so that pump could be leaking and dripping down. You also have right here where these hard lines are going in, that's the steering box. The steering box could be leaking. And you also have the hoses themselves. So of course the steering box would be the most expensive issue that we could have and the hardest to replace. The power steering pump would be next. I think the steering box is probably close to $1,000. I'm not sure, I haven't priced one out before. I would estimate power steering pump probably around $100, and then if it's a hose would be the third option. That would be of course the cheapest, depending on which hose. Could be as cheap as $20-30 bucks. So we're gonna have to dig into this thing. Here's another angle of the top of the skid plate under the differential there. Don't see any fluid from this side. I see a drip just fell. There's a strut in there, kind of a shock absorber that goes on the on the steering arm to stabilize it, steering stabilizer. I saw a drip on the boot, which means it's coming out above that, and right above that is actually where the power steering pump is. So that's got me leaning towards power steering pump right this second, but of course hoses do connect to that pump, so there's still a possibility it's a hose, but at this point I'm gonna bet on power steering pump. This thing's got just under 100,000 miles on it. It's a 2003 model, so for the seals to go out in the pump, that's probably not that uncommon. It's probably about that time. So let's see what we got to do here to get this thing tore down and take a closer look and figure out what we got to do to get it apart. Looking from the top side, we can see the power steering pump down there, and we can see the serpentine belt. If I'm going to tear that all apart, that's I think the original serpentine belt, so I'll go ahead and replace that as well. But that pump is just tucked in there tight, and I got a feeling it's going to be a little bit of a bear to get out. Now we've got K&N filter on this, so this breather tube here is a different configuration than the original. The original would have big plastic stuff all here going up. and we'd actually have to remove all of that to get to it. But because this configuration actually takes less space, I don't think we're even going to have to pull that out, so that'll save a little bit. But we will have to pull that serpentine belt and the power steering pump, of course. So let me start from the bottom and see if we can get a better angle under there. So let's get some stuff together and pull that skid plate. Alright, so we put a drip pan underneath the drip so that doesn't keep making a mess. And now we're going to start pulling off this skid plate so we can get access. And I'm just using a DeWalt 1/4 inch ratchet with a socket adapter. I didn't mean to do that. Okay, so we've got access now. We can see up in here, and oh yeah, if we look at the bottom end of that pump, I can actually see fluid all over that hose. But if we follow that hose up, there's a gap right in that pulley, and so right up in here I can see it's wet with fluid. And if we follow that up further, that's where the main seal is, where the shaft comes out of the front of that pump for the pulley to sit on. And so based on the fact that it's wet and that's above the hose, that tells me that the pump is in fact the problem. We've lost our main seal on that pump, and so we're gonna have to pull that pump out and replace it. So first thing we're gonna do is pull that serpentine belt off. So that's gonna be a little bit fun. I think I'm gonna need to get a 1/2 inch breaker bar for that. So let me gather some stuff and we'll get on it. Alright, with these things, the serpentine belt goes crazy all over the place. So anytime before you pull a belt like that that goes all crazy directions, you want to make sure that you either A, have the diagram. So this diagram right here, 4.6 or 5.4 liter, we got the 5.4 liter V8, and here's the configuration. So basically you got the power steering pump here, this is the fan, this is the crankshaft, this is the air conditioning, this is the tensioner pulley, and this is another pulley. So, and this is the alternator up here. So you look at this, and then you look at your belt inside, make sure that your configuration matches, so that you know when you put the new one on that you can route it correctly. And like I say, since this thing's a puzzle by itself, you definitely want to make sure you have that. If your decal is gone or worn to where you can't read it, then what you want to do is draw your own diagram and you know, get good pictures, whatever, so that you make sure that you can put it back together the way that it goes. Otherwise you might find yourself doing a bunch of research online trying to do that. So this right here is a tensioner, and right here is the tensioner pulley that pulls the whole serpentine belt tight. We've got a 1/2 inch like socket square right here. So what we'll do is we'll take a breaker bar and put that on that tensioner and then pull it loose, and that should give us the ability to pull this belt right off. I'm going to try to get this camera in somewhere here where I can see it. That may be the best we can do. So take this breaker bar, try to get it into that. There it goes. Okay, so we've got it in the hole. Now we pull it towards the driver's side and loosen that belt up. There we go. Just pulled the belt off of the top end. Got it all loose there, so now we just gotta unwind it out of there and get it out of our way, get our breaker bar back out. And we should be good to go. See if we can get to that from somewhere. Get it off of the air conditioner down there. Okay. So the only thing that's around now is the air conditioner still. And of course, it's not easy to reach, so for now I'm just going to fold that out of the way. We are going to replace that and put a new one on, because like I said, this vehicle has close to 100,000 miles, so we might as well replace it anyway. So that at least takes the belt off of the power steering pump down there. So I think now our work will be from underneath, trying to get that thing unbolted. And I think it'll be a little bit of a bear, but let's see what we can do. Alright, we can see we got two hoses that go into this pump. This one right here goes from the pump to the steering box. It's a high pressure hose, so that's your pressure side. And then up there we've got a low pressure hose, that's your return line. So the first thing we're going to have to do, I see it's got a little hose clamp on it. We're going to have to get up there and pull that hose clamp off and slide that hose off the low pressure side first. And we'll use a little set of channel locks to get a hold of that clamp, because it's the squeeze type. And we'll get that off and slide it there, off of there. Okay, that wasn't too bad. If we can see it here, we were able to get a pair of channel locks up here, grab this clamp right here, and just slide it right off. And of course we got the oil pan down here underneath catching all that fluid that's draining out. So that was the easy part. Next, you can see we got a bolt here, another one up on top. There's another one there and another one up on top in the front. So we're going to see if we can get a long extension up in there. And not sure if we'll be able to use the ratchet on that, or if we'll have to do it the old-fashioned way with a regular hand operated ratchet. But we'll see if we can get the DeWalt to fit in this space and do that, but I don't think we're going to be able to. Okay, like I suspected, not enough room to get the DeWalt ratchet up there, so we've got a long extension 10mm socket and a Harbor Freight ratchet. What I like about this ratchet here is one side is 3/8, the other side is 1/4 inch. And I also like, oh, it's stuck. There we go. It extends, so if you need to get more leverage, you can extend that handle out. That's just a nice feature. But because it collapses and because it's 2 wrenches in one, it's really great to have in the toolbox because it saves space by not having to have multiple wrenches. So I do like this wrench, and my 1/2 inch wrench that I carry is the same brand, and it extends to give more leverage as well. So a plug for Harbor Freight there. And no, I'm not sponsored. Not sponsored by anybody. Okay, let's see if we can get up in here. So we got a bolt there and a bolt up there. So there's not really any way to film this while I'm doing it, but you can see I got the wrench on that bolt on the top, and there's another one right there on the bottom. So I'm gonna set the camera down because I can't film and take these bolts out. So stay with me while I get these bolts out. Okay, so we got the 3 bolts off. I thought there were 4, but by 2003 they had determined the 4th bolt was worthless and just too difficult to get in and out, not needed, so they only put 3 bolts on it. So the toughest part of getting them out, the 2 bolts in the back, were pretty easy. Once they broke free, they screwed right back out, no problem. And then the front bolt on the top, that one was a little bit challenging. We had to put a universal joint onto our socket, so that also referred to as a wobble. Anyway, we needed to change the angle a little bit of that to get it in there right, so we put a universal joint on the socket. If you don't know what that is, it's this little joint right here. Just gives you the ability to wobble that socket around. So that gave us the right angle to get in there. It was a little bit tougher to break free. Once it broke free, then we had the weight of the pump on it, so a little bit harder to unscrew by hand, because once we broke them free, we didn't need the ratchet to unscrew them. They were all pretty easy, but this one, like I said, had the weight of the pump on it, so it was just a little bit more challenging, but in all honesty, it wasn't too bad. So now our pump is free, and we're gonna bring that out. See if we can move our drip pan here so that we're catching what's still dripping in the back, and we can get this pump down, and there we go. So that's just allowing us to let that fluid drain freely down into this drip pan and not make a mess in the driveway. So we'll have to disconnect that there. That looks like just a little tape or something. It's plastic, so no big deal. So we'll take this nut off here to free up the hose. That'll free up the pump, and then we'll go to the parts store and get a new pump. See if we can get a look at this. And I mean, you can see fluid all around the pulley there. Now you can pull these pulleys off and reuse them on the new pump, but I'll just buy a pump with a pulley on it because I don't feel like messing with that. We'll inspect it, I guess, after we get it off and see that we can verify that it is coming from that seal. So let's see if I can set this camera up here to be on its own. Okay, yeah, so here's the problem. Moving the camera around is my hands are pretty greasy, and I of course don't want to get my camera all covered with grease, so trying to be careful with that. Let me see if I can find a socket to fit that. Of course, the set that I have here goes up to a 17 millimeter, and it appears to be an 18 millimeter. Always something. I'm gonna have to go look for a wrench. My other set of wrenches are up at the property, so hopefully I've got an 18 millimeter wrench around here opening. We could not find an 18 millimeter wrench, so we went to the parts store and we were able to pick up the correct wrench, which is an 18 millimeter flare wrench. The benefit of this wrench is it wraps around the nut much more than in just an open-end box, which only grabs two sides. It wraps around and prevents you from rounding those corners, and since that sucker was on there so tight, I definitely recommend having one to do this job. We also picked up the new power steering pump. This is a remanufactured pump with the pulley on. I believe it had a 3-year warranty, and it was less than $100. So, should do the job just fine. We also picked up a bottle of power steering fluid to refill it when we're done, and the new serpentine belt. We need to get that hose separated from the original power steering pump, and like I say, that sucker was really on there tight. I definitely recommend breaking that free before you remove the pump from the truck. Here we were able to try to wedge that thing into a hole we had there on the lift kit, and that at least helped, but it was still difficult to get off. Took us a few tries. Also put another wrench on the end of our wrench to get more leverage. Of course, there you see it kind of popped off on us. We still haven't broke it free, but we don't quit. So we keep going at it. Try to get it on there again, get that thing wedged in there tight to hold it. Then get our second wrench back on there for more leverage. Work on breaking that thing free. This was way more difficult than it needed to be, so definitely break that free before you take the pump off the truck. And there we did get it to break free, so it was good. Of course, because that wrench is so fat to wrap around that flare nut, it kind of the pulley gets in the way as well. So to make that easier, I would have a open-end regular 18 millimeter wrench handy as well, and use that to break that thing, or to take it off once you broke it free. We ended up using a crescent wrench to get it, which is kind of big and bulky, but it did get the job done, so that's the bottom line. We were able to get it off. The new pump did come with a Teflon ring. That was the plastic that we noticed when we took the thing off. So you have to get the ring back onto the flare nut. You can warm it up, and that makes it a little more pliable. We, of course, were too lazy to do that, so we just worked it on little by little. Probably would have been easier if we warmed it up and made it more pliable, but at the end of the day, we got the job done, so no harm, no foul. But if you're doing it, probably easier if you can warm it up a little bit. We also ended up using a little pick to get it on all the way. We got it most of the way by hand, or halfway, I'd say. And then we used a small pick to get under it and do it the other way. Of course, you got to be careful when you're doing that, because you can damage the Teflon ring. And there we are using the pick. Got it up underneath the ring and then just went around it to lift it over the threads. It did take a little bit of work, but we were able to get it on there. Now we've got to put the power steering pump on. So first thing we're going to do is try to just thread that hose on and get it hand tight. We're not worried about tightening it up yet. We'll tighten it up good once it's on the truck. That way we don't have to try to leverage it in to hold it or anything. The truck, the bolts to the truck will hold it in place for us and make the job much easier. Of course, this thing didn't want to screw on easily by hand, so we did have to work with it a little bit, and then of course we used our crescent wrench again to tighten it up. Definitely recommend just a 18 millimeter open end wrench. Would be much easier than trying to do it with the bulky crescent wrench. Although the crescent wrench did do the job, it just would have been easier. So always great to have the correct tools when you're working on a job, but at the end of the day, we got it done. So we got the pump all put on. Bolt up there, bolt back there, another one up and top in the back. Pulley's good. This hose right here, I don't like the way it fits. It has just a little bit of play in it. Doesn't seem right to me, but this nut is as tight as it can go, so we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully it doesn't leak. And then of course the other line here is the return line. That's on no problem, so we're good to go. All we got to do is put the serpentine belt on and add the fluid and then try her out. Okay, the new serpentine belt is back on, and the trick to getting it on, what I did, I routed it completely and I did not put it up over this fan pulley. I left it down here, so that created enough slack in the line to get it around all the pulleys and everything. And then I put the breaker bar on the torsion pulley, loosened that up, and then was able to pull the belt up over the fan pulley, and everything appears tight. So we're good there. Now we need to fill the reservoir with fluid and see if this thing works. Okay, so we filled the reservoir. You can see here it is filled exactly to the max line. I expect that once we start it up, it's gonna run stuff through the system and that'll drop, and then we'll add to it afterwards to top it back off. Alright, so everything seems to be working great. The fluid is running right at max. Don't see any leaks above or below, while under pressure, of course. And everything works. It does have a very slight whine, but I think that'll go away with time. When we first started, of course, as it was getting fluid through the system, it had a louder whine. Now it's very, very slight. As always, folks, we try to share what we're doing just to maybe help somebody else figure it out a little easier. I'm sure there's a lot of different ways to do this job. This is how we did it. It worked. Everything's good to go. So we call it done. You can go out and watch a million videos on YouTube and maybe come up with a little better way where you can save a little time here or there. I don't know. But that's how we do things. We figure it out, we get it done, and the end result is the same. A job done. So as always, thanks for watching. God bless. We'll see you on the next one.